Hi, welcome back. This is session number 7 in our series on Christian growth, and as normal, I'm out in the woods. Man, I love it out here. I love the wildness of nature. I love the growing trees and plants. Man, it's also fresh and it's so natural. Everything's received from the very hand of God. The sunshine, the rain. I think there's a storm coming up behind me. You may hear some of the thunder. But you know, there's something that happens when men get involved in nature. I'm going to show it to you. Hang on. You know, here we have a pine forest, and it's just so pretty to walk through here and enjoy nature as it is. But you know, when men get involved, that's the result of it. There's an old beer can. I could walk down through here and just show you the pollution that men have just thrown garbage back in here in this really pretty site, and the brokenness, and you know, water bottles, and there's an old tire back there. It just ruins the whole setting, doesn't it? You know, Christian growth and the gospel is so simple and so pure, and yet men pollute it. Men pollute it with the doctrines of men. Men pollute it with their own ideas of what it takes to grow as a believer. Paul asked an incredible question when he asked the Galatians, having begun in the Spirit, are you now made perfect by the flesh? In other words, having been saved by the grace of God and by the Spirit of the Lord, are you now going to grow? You couldn't get yourself saved, so now you're going to make yourself grow by trying harder and doing more. Hey, through this study, I hope you're seeing, this is going to be a short session, but I hope you're seeing how radical and how revolutionary the gospel is. In other words, this is like nothing you've ever encountered before. This is like contrary to almost all the teachings that you've ever encountered in the Christian life. This is probably completely opposite most of the books you've read and most of the sermons you've heard. We're told to be more devoted. We're told to pray harder. We're told to pray the fire of God down in our lives. We're told to witness more, and I can't get off this theme that it's harder to unlearn something than to actually learn something. Do you know that? I could teach you this stuff, but before you learn it, you have to unlearn all the garbage you've heard over the years about what it means to grow as a believer. It isn't 50% grace and 50% you trying harder or doing more or having effort in the thing. It's not 80-20, it's not 90-10. It's 100% the grace and Spirit of the Lord, and you receiving that grace. You know, I think back of the children of Israel. When they entered the land, they had been out in that wilderness for 40 years. 40 years of failure. Now, they had been taken out of Egypt. Egypt is a kind of a biblical picture of the world. Crossing the Red Sea is kind of a symbolic of getting saved, being born again in our lives. And then they were immediately enter into the promised land, but they didn't do it. They didn't do it. Why? Because they lacked faith. They didn't believe God, that God could conquer the enemy. And because they disobeyed God in the matter of faith and believing, they were told to go out in that wilderness for 40 years, and not a soldier of them was to enter that land from the age 20 down. Failure. That was what the wilderness was all about. And when they got back to Canaan land, and Caleb and Joshua were still there, God says, you're ready. Go in and possess that land. The land is not a picture of heaven. The land of Israel is a picture of the victorious Christian life. I know that because there are enemies in the land. The enemies of self, the enemies of pride and greed, the enemies of all the manifestations of self that are in our lives. Those are the enemies. And God has victoriously driven all those out by our faith, if we believe. Well, that'll be all I talk about. I guess I just really wanted to emphasize to you today that you got to reject everything you've been taught and told pretty much your whole Christian life, because this thing is so revolutionary and radical in nature. This is about the Spirit of God, the grace of God through the work of the cross that's already happened, setting you free from the bondage of self and sin and giving you the land of victorious Christian living. We'll talk about more specifics. We got about 3 more sessions to go. But I guess I want to jar you to make you think of how radical this is, how revolutionary this is. You've got to unthink everything you've thought almost about the Christian life. Then you've got to come at it from a basis of eating the flesh and drinking the blood of Jesus Christ. You must come from the basis, when you eat and you drink, you're simply receiving. You're receiving into your life the life of Christ himself and the work of the cross. That's enough for this week. I'll see you next week. Have a great week.